So I'll just go like right into the first question.
Okay.
And so there's this concept of minimalism, right? And I think it has like a wide array of different contexts. It, it depends on who's talking about it. It depends what environment we're talking about. But I think the overarching concept in what therapists were looking for was really how do we live just as happy with less? So less stuff, like less materialism, less papers, less crap, essentially. How do we live with less stuff in our lives and still maintain like a really happy aura about us?
Well, and I think one thing that I've learned, working with clients is that, first of all, I don't think a lot of times people realize what our physical environments, create in us like internally. So when we have a lot of stuff around us, we're not even realizing like the stress that that's putting on us, because the more things we have in our homes, the more stuff we have to manage, the more stuff we have to make space for, all of those things kind of contribute, and they're adding more stress versus being, because and the reality is that we're always kind of things that are like for the what if scenarios, right? The just in case, kind of items and things like that. And so if we kind of look at it in more of like a practical sense of like, okay, am I keeping these things for that just in case scenario? And then if I am, you're probably finding that, even a year or two down the road, you still haven't used those just in case items. So why not get rid of them? And then in the case that you maybe need something, you can go out and actually get it for that purpose.
I like that. So kind of living in the moment, like using what you need right now, but other things that you don't need and you don't think you're going to need them for a long time, maybe let those go, or maybe let them sit somewhere else, someone else's house or some other place.
Yeah.
So it's not causing clutter.
And I think part of the reality too is that like a lot of the things are, because I know a lot of us are very like conscious about our budgets and spending and things like that. And the reality, I think, is that most things are pretty, easy to replace if we did end up needing them. Maybe items that are more like high ticket items, maybe there's ways to still let go of those without letting go of just the cost of what you spent on it kind of thing. But all the other items are, like a couple dollars here and there that you could really easily replace if you needed to.
Sure. So kind of based on monetary value in a lot of ways too. And
and
there's probably like a sentimental component, if it's increasingly, sentimental to you and you just really can't get that item another time or get that thing another time. You like, maybe there's a creative way to like store the memory without storing like the space.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. I think that's kind of exactly where we're headed with the minimalist concept. I think it's thrown around pretty heavily these days. And like I said, it can depend on the person and the context and a whole bunch of different factors. But I think the mindfulness component of using now what you need and then stuff that could be put on the back burner, it can go somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, with our society, we're such a consumer focused society, these days. And so, there's sales everywhere you turn. There's, things for a great price or a great deal. And it's really, overwhelming, I think, sometimes to try to navigate that and just be real with yourself about like, okay, yeah, that's, 40% off, but would I buy it at full price? Well, no, because I'm not going to use it or I don't need it. It looks good because it's 40% off, and we all like a good deal.
Right.
So, just kind of like managing that expectation too of, just because it's on sale doesn't mean it's worth getting it just to have it. If it's something that you've really been wanting, then that's great when it goes on sale because then you get the most value for your money spent. But when it's just, something that looks cool and it's only appealing because it's on sale, it's like, let's, have that conversation with ourselves about realistically, is this something that's going to be useful to us versus something that's just going to be, shoved into another closet and not be seen again for, 5 years.
And I think that's a skill we use with our clients too, in the sense of being mindful, of what we're doing, being mindful of eating, being mindful of spending, being mindful of where we are in the present moment. So I think that's a great skill to apply to ourselves as well.
Yeah.
And another question the therapist had was about paper. What are they supposed to do with paper? Obviously there's going to be important pieces of paper that you probably have to keep. But then there's just going to be this storage of mass of paper. And they were just curious if there's any like helpful tactic or technique to deal with paper.
So are we talking about, like, what type of paper are we kind of talking about? Like stuff for work purposes or kid stuff?
I think mostly like work purposes, right? You know, maybe get electronic, but it's just the incoming buildup of paperwork that tends to be, you know, consuming and taking up their time rather than being productive or being helpful for them. But I think it was paper in general, paper from work, paper from kids, paper from, you know, professional entities.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, you know, a lot of times I do recommend, you know, kind of digitizing some of that paperwork if it's more, you know, just notes from seminars or things that you've done where you've just kind of like, or as you've gone along your professional career and you've, you know, made certain notes to yourself about different strategies and things like that. I mean, all of that could be easily, I think, scanned and put into one folder that's maybe there as a reference versus having, you know, notebooks and paper all over your office of things that, you know, I mean, I don't know. For me personally, it's like I write a lot of things down, but how often I actually go back and reference any of that is very minimal.
Okay.
You know, I think, I mean, I think for me, I just know that I won't reference those things as often unless it's something that's really important or something that's really happening now. So I think just being kind of having like maybe a maintenance schedule where every quarter, you know, you maybe spend a little bit of time culling through any of your old notes or, you know, whatever, like I said, stuff from a seminar, maybe the things from the seminar are kind of outdated already. You know, I mean, some of that information is updating and changing all the time.
Sure.
And so maybe, you know, to that extent, it's not really giving you the value that you need in order to still justify holding on to it. So I think
I can see that too. I feel like by the time we would like reference any sort of paper reference, like it would be outdated. It doesn't even matter what the context is. I feel like that's just how quick everything changes.
Absolutely.
And I think we need to be like more adaptable to the change rather than, you know, kind of putting on the brakes and keeping it in written format, you know, and not transitioning with society in the same direction.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think that's totally helpful.
Yeah. And then in terms of like kids paperwork, one kind of popular thing right now is just doing like a little, you know, file bin kind of thing. And you can have a file folder in there for each school year or, you know, age number or something like that. And you kind of, so you're kind of giving yourself a limitation to work within. And you're saying, okay, everything that, you know, I want to keep, as long as it fits into this bin, I'm going to keep it. But then, you know, the next year comes and goes, and then you kind of go back and you edit what you've kept previous years. And so you're kind of managing it, you know, in that sense, because, you know, maybe things from your kiddo's kindergarten class aren't as important to you or them now that they're in 3rd or 4th grade. You know, and so kind of still doing that constant edit of it, but keeping it restrained within, you know, whatever that bin or, you know, file looks like for you. I think is something that's really powerful because you know, I don't know how it is for you, but, you know, I had a situation where my mom gave me this huge box of stuff that was all from when I was and I went through and looked through it and I just thought like, you know, what is happening?
why would you store
most of it went to the trash anyway.
Right. But I do like the, you know, editing every year, you know, so changing with the times, like getting new paperwork and making sure you're like cleaning out the clutter of the old paperwork that's not as relevant or wouldn't serve any useful purpose.
Yeah, that's kind of like, you know, as they get older, they're obviously learning more skills. So if they wrote a story, you know, that's really a cool, fun thing to hold on to versus, you know, a painting that they did in kindergarten that, you know, maybe isn't as important now because they've grown so much since then, kind of thing.
Sure. No, I like that. That's great.
Yeah.
And I think the next thing too was getting it family friendly. So these organization tactics, if you will, getting your house nice and clean and tidy. How do you get the family involved? Because I know from personal experience, you know, my husband and my kids are going to put on the brakes as quick as I get started. You know, so I've got like all these resistant members, and I'm the only one incentivized to, you know, do something cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's different ways, and you kind of have to test out different ways with your family to kind of see what works for you. But I always like the idea of kind of creating some sort of incentive, not necessarily bribery, but, incentive to really get everybody to want to be involved, everybody to feel like they have a valued, input to give, and that they're being, their ideas are being heard, kind of thing. I feel like those are all powerful tools to use when you're trying to put together, a system. So maybe there's like a fun way that you can track, the chore chart or something. And maybe, once you reach whatever your goal is, then, somebody gets to pick what the activity is going to be. So maybe it's like, if we reach X goal, we're going to all go do a picnic together, or you give them two options to choose from. But it's something that they kind of have a goal of working towards, and then they get to choose what that reward is going to look like, within reason.
I think about the difference in reward between like my husband and my kids, for like my son, we're potty training right now. So he gets a gummy bear when he tells me that he has to go potty, not just pottying, but when he tells me.
Yeah.
And then, if he stacks up, enough gummy bears, he gets like 10 gummy bears, he gets like a real prize.
Yeah.
So he has like something to work towards. So I can conceptualize that. Anything helpful for the husbands in the world?
That's definitely a little bit trickier. But I think, I think that really is about, having conversation and seeing what it is, because I think sometimes it's just that we have different ideas about what, being organized or having the house in order is. So having that conversation and trying to really understand what each person views as important or valuable in that process of having the house in order, I think is really powerful. Something that works for me and my husband is just that, like, we've kind of had conversations about things that we like and don't like to do around the house. And so if there's things that he prefers to do that I really don't prefer to do, then those are things that he takes on, and then I take on something else.
Oh, that's nice. I like that.
Yeah. So kind of just having that conversation, because it's like, maybe they like to do the dishes, and you are like, you know what, that's great, because I don't want to do the dishes. But you kind of have that, that input from each other, and you kind of try to navigate it. I mean, obviously there's still things that probably both of you don't want to do, and then maybe you flip a coin or switch out every week or something.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. Take out the trash. That's not a winner on either side.
Yeah.
No, nobody wants to take out the trash.
No. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that was it as far as questions. I know that I'm super appreciative. Meaghan Rice from Talkspace. I'm actually the moderator, co-moderator. I moderate with Sarah as well, but we moderate Braces and Bounce Houses channel.
Okay.
And on that channel, we have all the therapists on our platform that are also parents. And so we've got quite a few in that channel, and they're always looking for, more helpful tips and coping skills, and, just getting outside of the box and getting a little bit more creative, because, that's what we're doing all day, every day is, helping clients find resources and coping skills. We don't often get to think about ourselves and what we need. So
sure. Yeah.
We absolutely appreciate your time.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do it. And like I said, if anybody has any, further specific questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I can try to support them in that way and give them more, kind of specialized advice or tips. I'm Melissa Rogers, creator and lead organizer at Modified by Melissa. Modified by Melissa is a home organizing service that works with busy families to help them create more order in their homes so that they can focus less on stuff and more on living.